information if you guys want to grab it. I'm going to go ahead and switch the slide up. Maybe.
The mouse isn't working for me.
Probably not. There we go.
Whoa.
Is this working all right?
Whoa.
Yes.
Alright, cool. So this is a summary on how humans consume energy on Earth. And I chose to start with the sun because all the energy that we do consume comes from the sun. So aside from this being an assignment that we're supposed to do in our area of study, I have a degree in energy technology, or my reasons of doing this is because I have a degree in energy technology and I'm pursuing electrical engineering. This is a little bit slow with the screen, I didn't expect this. So as an overview, what we're going to be going over is oil, where it originated from, how we're using it today. We'll also be going over energy source comparisons and energy, population, and the future. So, I like the idea of perpetuating the existence of our species on this Earth, and I think you should have a vested interest in that for you, your kids, your grandkids, kids, so on and so forth. And so let's start with oil. Hundreds of millions of years ago, tectonic plates were shifting around and chasms were created. As a result of that, ocean water flooded in and different types of algae and bacteria multiplied in the trillions. Eventually, they died out to fall at the bottom of these chasms and in the trillions. And over time, different rivers and whatnot brought sediment in, filled these chasms, and then created pressure and heat, and over millions of years, created oil, which is basically just stored sunlight.
Jeez.
So you got oil, natural gas to be there, and a similar process on land created coal. So since the 1930s, we've pumped about 2 trillion, or no, we know about 2 trillion barrels of oil. We've pumped about half of that. So as you know, America, we've been importing all kinds of oil for the last 30 years. But at one point we were actually we were on the increase for production, but now we're on the decline. As you know, any oil reserve has a limitation. After a certain point, you produce less than you were before, and that's known as a bell curve. And it's about every 40 years or so, you'll find a decline. The world, just like the US did in the 70s, the world is approaching that right now. So petrochemicals offer other things than just energy, or oil does, as in petrochemicals, excuse me. The roads we drive on are made of petrol, houses all over the place, especially our roofs. We've got farming practices, petroleum is in our food, we talked about that in the conversation before this. And everything you love, cell phones, blah, 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 you know, made out of petrol. Anything at Walmart, right? So with a petroleum-based economy, it's designed that we drive everywhere to get somewhere. We've got zones set up where industrial is in between residential and commercial, having to drive long distances. So this is how our economy and how our infrastructure is set up, is to run off of oil. So to give you a summary of what I'm talking about, for every average American, behind them is energy worth about 150 slave hours working 24 hours a day. Alright, so some comparison of different energy sources. Start with oil. It's energy dense. We consume about 1 cubic mile of oil a year. And to talk about energy density, before it would take 1 barrel of oil to get 100 barrels of oil. Now it's 1 barrel of oil gets us about 6 barrels of oil. That's because of having to go long distances and bring it back, and a lot of energy and just the technology and whatnot. To talk about coal, I'm sure you guys are familiar with that. We're looking at about 2030 when it'll start to decline worldwide. This was some pictures from a few days ago in Harbin, China, and they were 40 times over the safe limit. They shut down everything, airports, schools, whatnot. So these are some of the effects from coal in places outside of here. So natural gas, we've had some huge breakthroughs in natural gas, but unfortunately, we'll probably see a decline in about 2040 or so. Uranium, I'm sure everyone's a big fan of uranium here, right? The idea behind uranium is if we were able to power the whole world to 10 terawatts, it would take about 10,000 nuclear reactors to do that, and our supply would only last 10 to 20 years. So it's really not a feasible answer in the long run. We talk about nuclear fusion. Technical difficulties are just way too in the future and not really a consideration at this point. And then, sorry, things are a little slow on this side. So wind energy is intermittent, so you have a problem not being able to store the energy, and it's not reliable. Unlike a dam, which is reliable and you can pull energy anytime you want, in the developed area we've dammed up most of our rivers. So, talk about geothermal. According to MIT, we could do about 10% of our energy by 2050, and most of this can be done around like the Ring of Fire. There is newer technologies that might increase this, using enhanced geothermal, where you're pumping water down and then bring it back up hot from various places that are warmer, like the mantle. Excuse me. Wave energy, aside from the fact that it's all on the shore and you can't really get it inland, you've got the problem of it corroding underwater because of the salt. And biofuels. Wood is not very energy dense, and it also messes up other ecosystems. Corn is a big joke. I don't know. Ever heard of a famine? If your transportation and both, for food and transporting that food is relying on a crop, it's kind of stupid, especially how monocrops work. If we were to do that and do 100% ethanol in the United States, this is a representation of how much land we would use, which would be double what we use for food. Hydrogen. That's one of my favorites. I've got a proton exchange membrane fuel cell that I got to work on, so I passed this around. But this is not an energy source, or hydrogen isn't. We use electricity from, like, say, a windmill or a solar panel to make that energy. So it's not an energy source, and it's commonly mistaken as that. So just to keep it straight, but it's a great thing to take something like wind and then use hydrogen to store it, although there's issues with the efficiency of that. Oh yeah, also on a note, the National Renewable Energy Labs have renewed their interest towards hydrogen and hydrogen fuel cells. Solar modules, also known as solar panels. If we were to power the United States, we would kind of maybe make a new state with just solar panels. It would be 147 square miles. If we wanted to do the world, according to Miles Rich Hessler, which is a solar contractor company, about the size of Spain. The transmission issue is that we have a bunch of warm sunlight here, and then different kind of weather above that. We'd have to transmit that energy and lose about 50 to 80% of that energy as you transmit it. So it goes the same with wind. Obviously when it comes to renewable energies, there's a lot of difficulties, a lot of frustrations as engineers or anybody that gets involved with this particular problem. Right now, currently, according to BP, their energy report, there's a 15.2% gain in 2012 for renewable growth, but it only takes 5.7% of the overall energy consumption that we use. So it's really not that much. So this is the third part, and we're going to talk about people. All right, cool. So world population obviously has been steady and then shot up here just recently, exponentially. And in explaining exponential growth, 1% will double every 70 years, 2% will double every 35 years, 10% will double every 7 years. So when you double your population, you double your energy consumption. As you can tell, we're on a sphere, so there's not a limited way of exponentially growing. And so this is sort of a visual on how that goes together. And that there is a limit to what we can do in terms of growth. So this is my analogy. This is Bob, he's a piece of bacteria. It's 11 o'clock, he's in the bottle, and he multiplies. And at 11:59, the bottle's half full. So Bob comes back, he says, hey, we got a problem. I kind of feel like this guy right now. And he says, hey, we got a problem, we got to come up with a solution. So the solution is get 3 more bottles before the next doubling, which will happen at 12 o'clock, right? Well, so they have 3 bottles, 12 o'clock hits, and they fill that bottle. 12:01 hits, they fill the next bottle, 12:02, and they fill the remaining 2 that's left over. Obviously, there's a problem here. So, just gonna go. Sorry. So, as an overview, well, first of all, this was a summary of energy, and I hope you have a vested interest in it, and that you've learned something from it. And as an overview, we talked about oil, where it came from, what it's doing now. We also talked about energy source and comparing those two, and energy population in the future. And I think, oh yeah, this is the remotivating thing. So don't let this happen. Be remotivated. And thank you for your time.